Two guys in HOA jackets tried towing my truck like they owned the street. My wife stood quiet at first, then calmly reached into her purse. When that badge came out, the whole block froze. None of us knew it would end like this. The trouble started on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where suburban streets hum with sprinklers and the low buzz of lawnmowers. I had just stepped onto the driveway to grab a wrench from my truck when I noticed an unfamiliar tow truck creeping down the street. Its amber lights blinked steadily, even though it wasn't an emergency. Two men stepped out. Matching navy jackets with the words HOA Enforcement Division embroidered in blocky letters across the back. Clipboards in hand. One wore mirrored sunglasses despite the overcast sky. The other had a cheap walkie-talkie clipped to his belt, buzzing with static that sounded more like a toy than real equipment. They moved with a swagger, the kind of arrogance you recognize instantly. The taller one pointed at my black pickup parked neatly in my own driveway and said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "There's the violation. This truck shouldn't be here. Tow it." I froze. "Excuse me?" The shorter one flipped a sheet of paper on his clipboard. "You're in violation of HOA Article 7B, Section 3. No commercial-style trucks are allowed in driveways. We've issued warnings. Now it's tow time." The absurdity almost made me laugh. My truck wasn't commercial. It was a regular F-150, clean, registered, insured. No logos, no ladders, no toolboxes. Just a family truck parked outside the home I paid good money for. My wife, Claire, stepped onto the porch holding her coffee mug, calm as ever. She didn't say a word, just watched. I took a step closer to the two men. "First off, you're not from the HOA. I've never seen you at a board meeting. Second, you don't have the authority to tow from my private driveway." The man with the sunglasses smirked. "Sir, we're contracted by the HOA board. We have every right to enforce compliance. If you resist, we'll escalate." From across the street, blinds shifted. My neighbors, the Thompsons, peered out from their living room. Next door, kids paused their basketball game, dribbling slowly, watching the scene unfold. That's how these things always go in suburbia. Conflict spreads like wildfire, and everyone suddenly has front row seats. The tow truck driver, a stocky man in grease-stained overalls, started backing the truck closer. The metallic clink of the chain echoed as he lowered the hook. I felt my jaw tighten. "You're not touching my vehicle." The shorter officer waved his fake citation sheet like a weapon. "You want to play tough guy? We've already filed this violation with the county. You'll be fined heavily and the truck's leaving either way." That's when Claire finally spoke. Her voice was calm, even, but carried across the driveway. "Why don't you show us your credentials first?" "Full names. Official HOA contract authorization." Both men hesitated. For a split second, their confidence cracked. But the taller one quickly recovered, pulling his sunglasses down the bridge of his nose. "You questioning us, ma'am? That's obstruction." Neighbors murmured. Phones came out. I spotted at least 3 cameras pointed in our direction now, recording. That only made the fake officers louder. They thrived on attention, playing to the audience. The tow truck's engine revved, exhaust puffing into the morning air. Its steel hook rattled against the asphalt as the driver began angling it under my truck's bumper. Something about that sound, metal scraping pavement, made my blood boil. I stepped forward, fists clenched, blocking the path. The tall man barked, "Step aside. You're interfering with HOA enforcement." I didn't move. My voice dropped low. "Touch my truck and you'll regret it." The shorter one leaned in, his breath reeking of stale coffee. "Is that a threat, sir?" Before I could respond, Claire set her coffee down on the porch railing and folded her arms. She didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch. She just watched, the way you watch a chess game when you already know how it will end. The crowd of neighbors thickened. Someone whispered, "Do they even work for the HOA?" Another replied, "I don't think so. Those uniforms look cheap." But the two men didn't back down. They doubled down. The taller one tapped his walkie-talkie dramatically. Static crackled. "We'll call this in. You'll be cited for obstruction and the county sheriff will deal with you." It was theater. Bad theater. And yet, the tow truck driver kept inching closer. The chain dragged across the asphalt, loud enough to set my teeth on edge. I planted my feet. My pulse pounded in my ears. This was my property. My driveway. My truck. And I wasn't about to let two pretenders push me around. Claire's calm eyes flicked toward me for the briefest second, as if to say, "Wait." But waiting wasn't in me. Not when I heard the final metallic snap as the tow hook latched onto the truck's bumper. The tow truck's engine roared, gears grinding, the cable tightening around my truck. In seconds they were going to drag it off my driveway. What would you do if strangers in fake uniforms hooked up your vehicle like they owned it? The chain pulled tight against the bumper with a harsh metallic clang. The tow truck shuddered as the driver shifted into gear, preparing to haul my truck up the ramp. My pulse hammered in my throat. Stop. I barked, stepping directly between the truck and my vehicle. You don't lay a finger on it until you show me real credentials. The taller fake officer smirked and raised his voice so the neighbors could hear. This man is obstructing lawful HOA enforcement. He's refusing to comply with board directives. This will be reported. Phones lifted higher. I counted at least 5 neighbors recording now, maybe more. Kids leaned on their bikes at the curb, wide-eyed. The entire cul-de-sac had turned into a silent amphitheater. Claire didn't flinch. She leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed, watching like a chess master letting pawns make the first reckless moves. The shorter man shoved a piece of paper in my face. The so-called violation notice. I snatched it and skimmed the text. Sloppy. No letterhead, no signatures, nothing official. Just bold text reading HOA enforcement citation, with a scribbled fine of $500. This is a joke, I said, waving it at him. This isn't even a real form. Where's the HOA president's signature? Where's the date? The man sneered. You think this is a game? We've already filed this with county records. You'll be lucky if it's only $500. From the porch, Claire's voice rang out, calm and deliberate. Why don't you tell everyone here your names? If you're acting on behalf of the HOA, you won't mind being accountable. The men hesitated. Their confidence faltered for a split second. But then the taller one doubled down. He pulled his sunglasses lower and jabbed his finger toward Claire. You don't speak to us, ma'am. Stay out of this. The crowd reacted, a low murmur, people whispering to each other. That single dismissive gesture had turned the neighbors against them. Still, the tow driver revved the engine again. The chain creaked, tightening around the bumper like a snake constricting. My stomach twisted. I stepped closer, glaring at the driver. You touch that winch again and you'll regret it. You're trespassing. You're violating my rights. The driver's eyes darted nervously to the fake officers. He wasn't sure. His hands hovered over the controls, knuckles pale. The shorter one reached for his walkie-talkie. Static crackled. He raised it to his mouth theatrically. Dispatch, we've got a non-compliant homeowner. We're calling in law enforcement. Request immediate backup. The words rang false, too polished, too rehearsed, like something lifted from a TV drama. But the effect was real. Neighbors gasped. Someone whispered, Are the cops really coming? Claire's eyes flicked toward me again. She still hadn't moved from her spot, but her calmness was unnerving. She wasn't surprised, wasn't shaken. It was as though she'd been waiting for this exact move. The taller man puffed his chest and barked, You're in violation, and now you're interfering with official duties. That's obstruction. When law enforcement arrives, you'll be cuffed and charged. I stepped nose to nose with him. You're no officer. You're impersonating authority. And the second real cops show up, you'll be the ones in cuffs. A ripple of approval spread through the neighbors. Someone clapped once, sharp, before falling silent again. The tension thickened. The tow truck idled, exhaust fumes curling into the morning air. Kids shifted nervously on their bikes. A mother pulled her toddler back toward her porch. The shorter man raised his voice, shouting into the static-spewing walkie. This is Enforcement Division, responding to a hostile homeowner at Maple Lane. Repeat, hostile homeowner. Send units now. It was absurd. Anyone could hear there was no dispatcher responding. Just empty static. But with the tow truck looming and the chain still locked onto my truck, the intimidation worked. One of the neighbors, Mr. Riley, called out from his lawn, Hey, you can't just take a man's truck. That's theft. The taller officer spun around, finger raised. Sir, unless you want to be cited for obstruction too, I suggest you step back. That only made Riley pull out his phone. Yeah, keep talking. This is all going on Facebook Live. The fake officers stiffened. They hated being filmed. I glanced at Claire again. Her face was calm, unreadable. But there was something in her eyes. Not fear, not even anger. Anticipation. She was waiting for the right moment. But I didn't know what she was waiting for. The taller man stepped so close his sunglasses nearly touched my face. This is your last chance. Step aside. Or you'll regret it. I refused to move. Try me. The tow truck driver's hand trembled on the gear shift. His jaw clenched. And then, from down the street, faint but unmistakable, came the rising wail of real police sirens. The crowd went dead silent. The fake officers froze. The tow driver cursed under his breath. And Claire? She finally set her coffee mug down on the porch rail and stood tall, eyes locked on the approaching cruiser. The sirens grew louder, bouncing off the houses like a warning bell. Curtains lifted across the street. Neighbors who had been hesitant to step outside now gathered at the edges of driveways, drawn by the sound. The cul-de-sac felt like a stage, every eye waiting for the curtain to rise. The fake officers exchanged a quick glance, their bravado slipping for the first time. The taller one adjusted his sunglasses, trying to hide the flicker of doubt. The shorter one clenched his clipboard so hard the paper crumpled at the edges. The tow truck driver shifted nervously, engine still idling. He looked like a man who had been dragged into something far above his pay grade. "Great," I muttered under my breath. "Now we'll see who's who." The taller fake officer straightened his shoulders and barked, "Good. Let the sheriff handle this. You're finished, pal?" His voice cracked slightly, but he forced the words out with false authority. The police cruiser turned onto the street, red and blue lights splashing across the homes. Tires crunched against the asphalt as it rolled to a stop at the end of my driveway. The crowd parted like water. 2 officers stepped out. The lead officer, mid-40s, tall, broad-shouldered, had the kind of presence that silenced noise without saying a word. The second, younger and lean, scanned the scene quickly, hand resting near his duty belt. The lead officer's voice carried. "What's going on here?" Instantly the fake officers pounced. The shorter one hurried forward, clipboard outstretched. "Officer, thank God you're here. This homeowner is hostile, combative, and refusing HOA directives. We attempted lawful enforcement, but he's obstructing us." The taller one added, "He even threatened us. We were forced to call for backup." The lead cop raised an eyebrow, his gaze shifting from them to me, then to the tow truck still hooked to my bumper. He didn't look convinced. I held my ground. "These 2 aren't from the HOA. They're impersonating enforcers, trying to tow my truck off private property with a bogus citation. Ask them for real credentials." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several neighbors chimed in. "Yeah, they just showed up out of nowhere. They've got fake papers. I got it all on video." The lead officer turned back to the fake enforcers. "Names?" The taller one stiffened. "We don't need to provide that. We're contractors. The HOA board hired us. We're in the middle of enforcement." The younger cop frowned. "Contractors or not, you need ID. Now." Silence. The shorter one shuffled his feet, eyes darting. Claire finally moved. She descended the porch steps slowly, mug now abandoned behind her. She didn't speak yet, but her presence drew attention. Calm, deliberate, steady, like she'd been waiting for this precise moment. The taller fake officer noticed her and snapped, "Ma'am, stay back. This doesn't concern you." The lead cop's eyes narrowed. He wasn't buying it. He extended a hand. "Papers. Authorization. Whatever contract you claim you have with the HOA." Reluctantly, the shorter man thrust forward the crumpled citation sheet, the same one I had waved earlier. The officer glanced at it once and let out a low breath through his nose. "This isn't an official document. It's barely legible." He looked up. "Do you have business cards? Work orders? A permit? Anything?" Neither man spoke. Their silence was louder than words. The crowd grew restless. Phones zoomed in. Someone whispered, "They're cooked." I felt a surge of relief, but it didn't last. The taller man suddenly jabbed a finger in my chest. "He's lying. This is a setup. He called his friends to make us look bad. We're doing our jobs and he's the one impersonating authority." I slapped his hand away, fury rising. "Touch me again and you'll regret it." The younger cop quickly stepped between us. "Enough." His hand hovered near his taser. Everybody calm down. The lead officer turned to Claire. "Ma'am, were you present when this started?" Her voice was calm, smooth as glass. "Yes. I watched them arrive. They came onto our property without warning, tried to tow my husband's truck, and refused to provide valid ID. Everything you've heard from my neighbors is true." The taller fake officer scoffed loudly. "Oh please. What's she gonna say, that she's an expert? That she knows the law?" Claire didn't react. Her face stayed composed, unreadable. The lead officer studied her for a long moment, as if sensing something he couldn't quite place. Then he asked, "Ma'am, do you have any identification?" The crowd held its breath. All eyes shifted to Claire. She reached into her purse slowly, deliberately. Every movement was measured. She pulled out her wallet, slipped out her driver's license and handed it over without a word. The officer scanned it, nodded, and gave it back. "Thank you." The taller man barked a laugh. "See? Nothing special. Just another civilian siding with her husband. Let's get on with it." The words echoed, smug and overconfident. But Claire's expression didn't change. If anything, a faint smile tugged at her lips. She hadn't played her full hand yet. The faint smile vanished as the taller fake officer suddenly stepped closer to Claire, his voice sharp and mocking. "Lady, you need to quit acting like you matter here. You've got no authority." The crowd gasped. The lead cop's jaw tightened. And Claire finally spoke, her voice cutting through the noise. "You're about to find out exactly how wrong you are." The silence after Claire's calm statement was electric. Neighbors leaned forward, hungry for the next move. The taller fake officer smirked, trying to mask his nerves, but his jaw was tight. The shorter one gripped his clipboard like a lifeline. The lead cop shifted his weight, his voice steady but firm. "All right, everyone step back. We need to get this straight." The younger officer moved quickly, guiding the crowd a few feet away, though no one truly left. Phones stayed up. Every angle was covered, doorbell cameras, smartphones, maybe even a drone buzzing faintly overhead. Suburban drama was social media currency, and this one had all the ingredients. The lead cop turned back to the imposters. "You've both been asked multiple times for identification. Contractor ID, HOA authorization, anything official. You've failed to provide it. So right now, all I see are two men in jackets pretending to enforce something they don't have authority for." The taller one bristled. "That's outrageous. We're here under direct instruction from the board. This man has a history of violations." I cut in sharply. "That's a lie. My truck has been parked here for years. I've never received a single notice. Ask the HOA president yourself." The officer's eyes narrowed. "Good idea. Who's the HOA president?" The imposters froze. A long pause stretched. Then the shorter one stammered, We deal with multiple communities. I'd have to check our files." The crowd laughed quietly, a ripple of disbelief. Someone muttered, "They don't even know the president's name." The lead cop's patience thinned. "Names? No. Both of you." The taller one puffed his chest, still clinging to his act. "We don't have to answer to you. This is HOA jurisdiction." The officer's voice sharpened. "You're on private property. You've engaged a tow truck to remove a resident's vehicle without authorization. That puts this squarely in my jurisdiction. So either you identify yourselves, or we'll take this a different direction." The younger officer had already stepped closer, hand near his cuffs. The imposters exchanged nervous glances, sweat glistening on their foreheads despite the cool morning air. Claire watched silently, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She hadn't flinched when the tall one mocked her. She hadn't risen to his bait. She just stood there, patient, deliberate, a predator waiting for her prey to walk into the trap. The tow truck driver suddenly killed the engine, his nerves finally showing. He stepped out, hands raised slightly. "Hey look, I was just called for a job. I don't know about contracts or whatever. I'm not trying to get arrested over this." The crowd murmured approval. At least one person called out, "Smart move." But the imposters weren't ready to fold. The shorter one blurted, "Look, we'll call the board president right now. Just give us a minute." The officer nodded. "Go ahead. Put it on speaker." They fumbled with a phone, tapping nervously. No one answered. After 3 attempts, the taller man shoved the phone back into his pocket. The officer stepped closer. "That's strike 3. You've got no authorization, no ID, and no one to vouch for you." That's when the taller man turned desperate. He pointed directly at Claire, his voice rising. "She's not neutral. She's feeding you lies. She's manipulating the situation." The officer tilted his head. "And how exactly would she be doing that?" She's just his wife. Of course she's going to defend him." Claire's lips curved into the faintest smile. For the first time since this began, she unfolded her arms and stepped forward. Her tone was cool even, but it cut like a knife. "You keep saying I don't matter. But you've made a mistake." The taller imposter scoffed. "Oh yeah? And what mistake is that?" The lead cop watched her carefully, like he sensed a deeper current beneath the surface. The younger officer shifted, suddenly alert. Claire reached into her purse again. Every eye followed her movement. The imposters rolled their eyes, one muttering, "Here we go again." But she didn't pull out her wallet this time. Instead, her hand paused inside, fingers brushing something deeper. Her composure never cracked. Her gaze locked on the lead cop. "Officer," she said evenly, "are you certain you want me to present identification here, in front of all these people?" A hush fell over the cul-de-sac. The crowd leaned in. Even the tow driver froze mid-step. The lead cop studied her for a long beat. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe suspicion, maybe respect. His tone shifted. "Ma'am, if you believe it's relevant, now would be the time." Claire's hand tightened inside her purse. The taller imposter barked a laugh, too loud, too forced. "This is ridiculous. She's bluffing." But his laugh didn't hide the nervous glance he cast at the officer's holstered weapon. The younger cop's voice was low but firm. "Sir, I'd hold your tongue if I were you." All eyes locked back on Claire. Claire's hand began to rise slowly from her purse, fingers wrapped around a slim black leather case. The corner of a shiny badge glinted in the flashing lights. The crowd collectively held its breath. And the taller imposter shouted, voice cracking, "Don't let her fool you, that badge is fake." Every breath in the cul-de-sac seemed suspended as Claire's hand rose from her purse. The slim black leather case gleamed in the red and blue wash of the cruiser's lights. Neighbors leaned closer. Phones trembled in eager hands trying to capture every angle. The taller imposter barked, "That's fake. Don't let her trick you. She's part of this whole scam." His voice cracked halfway through, betraying nerves. The shorter one nodded furiously, clipboard shaking in his grip. The lead cop extended a hand. "Ma'am, if you've got identification, let's see it." The moment stretched. Claire's gaze swept over the two imposters, then the tow driver, then finally settled on the officer. Calm, controlled, deliberate. She flipped open the case. The crowd gasped, straining to see. But what gleamed inside wasn't the expected flash of authority. It was just her driver's license, neatly tucked into a slim leather holder. The taller imposter let out a triumphant laugh. "See? Just a driver's license. Nothing special. She's bluffing, wasting your time." The shorter one jabbed his clipboard toward the officer. "Meanwhile, this man's truck is still in violation. Are you going to enforce the law or let these people make a mockery of it?" The lead cop studied Claire carefully as he took the license, scanning it with a practiced eye. He didn't say a word. He just handed it back after a moment. Claire accepted it without flinching. Her expression didn't falter. If anything, she looked amused, as if the imposters had just walked into a trap they couldn't see. The younger officer broke the silence. "So far you've produced nothing official. Meanwhile, they've at least shown identification, even if it's just a driver's license." The taller imposter seized on the words. "Exactly. So cuff him. He threatened us. He blocked an authorized tow. That's obstruction of enforcement." The lead cop's jaw tightened. His eyes shifted back to the tow truck, then to the chain hooked to my bumper. "Driver, did you initiate this tow under their direction?" The tow driver swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Look, I just got the call. They said it was legit. I don't want trouble. I'll unhook it right now if that makes this go away." He bent toward the controls, hands trembling. The taller imposter grabbed his arm. "Don't you dare. You're under contract. You walk away and you'll lose more than your job." The driver yanked his arm free. "I don't care about your threats. I'm not going to jail for this." The crowd erupted in whispers. One voice called out, "They're frauds." Another shouted, "Get them off the street." The imposters grew desperate. Their voices rose, shouting over one another, trying to drown out the truth. "He threatened us. She's covering for him. They're dangerous people." But their noise only made the neighbors angrier. Video cameras zoomed closer. Someone shouted, "Facebook's gonna love this." The lead cop finally raised a hand, his tone sharp. "Enough." Silence rippled through the cul-de-sac. He turned deliberately to Claire. "Ma'am, are you withholding any information that would clarify the situation?" Her eyes met his, steady and unblinking. Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile, more a warning. "I've given you exactly what you asked for," she said smoothly. "Nothing less. Nothing more." The imposters erupted again, voices cracking with desperation. "She's lying. She's hiding something." The younger officer stepped toward them, hand on his cuffs. "Watch your tone. You're about one step from impersonation charges." But the taller one wasn't finished. He jabbed a finger at Claire again, his voice trembling with forced authority. "She's bluffing. She doesn't matter. You think she's important? She's not." For the first time, Claire's calm broke just slightly, not into fear but into steel. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing, her voice suddenly sharp enough to cut glass. "You've made a mistake repeating that." The taller man froze mid-breath as if sensing the shift too late. The crowd buzzed. Neighbors looked at each other, murmuring, "What's she mean by that? She's hiding something. What if she's more than she looks?" Even the lead officer seemed to straighten, his eyes narrowing on Claire with a new intensity. He studied her body language, her deliberate control, her quiet confidence. The imposters tried to recover, waving their fake citation forms, shouting over one another. "He's lying. This is a setup. We're the authority here." But their words rang hollow now, because Claire had just shifted the balance without revealing anything concrete. And the silence that followed her words was more powerful than their shouting. The taller imposter, sweating now, lunged toward the tow truck controls in a last-ditch effort to force the tow. But before he could touch the lever, Claire's voice rang out, clear and commanding, in a tone that froze everyone mid-motion. "Step away. Now." The way she said it wasn't a request. It wasn't even a warning. It was an order. The air snapped taut after Claire's command. Her voice had landed like a hammer, not raised, not emotional, just crisp and absolute. "Step away. Now." For a heartbeat, even the flashing cruiser lights seemed to pause. The taller imposter froze mid-motion, his hand hovering inches above the tow truck's lever. His eyes flicked to the lead cop, searching for backup, but none came. The officer hadn't moved. He was watching Claire now, his expression tight, as though he was seeing something the rest of us hadn't yet noticed. The crowd murmured. One neighbor whispered, "She sounded like military." Another muttered, "That tone. Did you hear that?" The taller imposter shook his head, trying to snap himself back into control. He straightened his shoulders, puffing up his chest. "Don't listen to her. She's just his wife trying to play games. We're the only authority here." But his voice lacked the punch it had carried minutes ago. There was a quiver under the bluster. The tow driver, sensing the shift, backed away from the controls, palms raised. "I'm not touching this anymore. You guys lied to me. I'm done." The shorter imposter snapped, "You walk away and you'll regret it. We'll blacklist you from every job in the county." The driver's lip curled in disgust. "Blacklist me? From what? Fake HOA contracts. Forget it. I'm not going to jail because you two played dress up." The neighbors chuckled, the first ripple of laughter breaking the tension. The imposters' faces flushed red. Desperation makes men sloppy. And these two were unraveling fast. The taller one jabbed his finger at me again. "This whole thing is staged. He's dangerous and he spun toward Claire, his voice rising. "She's trying to intimidate us with fake authority. Don't let her distract you." The lead officer finally cut in, his tone sharp. "Enough. You're not helping yourselves. You've got no ID, no paperwork, and now you're harassing this man's wife." The imposter snapped back. "She's not innocent. She's manipulating everyone here. Look at her, standing there all smug. Who even is she?" That was the wrong question to ask. Claire tilted her head slightly, her eyes locked on him. Her voice stayed calm, but her words carried weight. "You don't want the answer to that." The taller man laughed too loudly, brittle around the edges. "Oh please. What, are you gonna tell us you're FBI now? Maybe CIA?" He waved dismissively at the crowd. "She's bluffing. You're all falling for it." But the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. The murmurs shifted. Words floated through the air: badge, tone of voice, authority. The younger officer stepped closer to Claire, his posture shifting almost imperceptibly, less defensive, more deferential. He didn't know what she was about to reveal, but he sensed it mattered. The taller imposter doubled down, shouting louder, trying to smother the silence. "This is harassment. We're the victims here. Arrest them both right now." The lead cop's jaw tightened. "Sir, you are seconds from being cuffed. I suggest you watch your words." The imposter didn't listen. His finger jabbed again, this time at Claire's chest. "She has no authority here. None." The crowd gasped. You could feel the shift, the collective intake of breath. Because Claire finally stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and the imposters. She didn't flinch at his finger in her space. She didn't even blink. Her voice dropped lower, steady as stone. "Be very careful who you dismiss." The taller imposter scoffed, but his bravado cracked. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple. The shorter one tugged his sleeve. "Let's just go," he hissed under his breath. "We're losing this." But the taller one wasn't ready to fold. He snapped his head toward the cops. "You gonna let her threaten me like that? You hear her? She's dangerous." The lead officer studied Claire, eyes narrowing, then looked back at the imposters. "She hasn't threatened you. She's told you to step back. And you'd be smart to listen. The imposters sputtered, voices overlapping, desperately clinging to their crumbling performance. She's bluffing. She's not who she says she is. This is entrapment. But their words drowned under the weight of Claire's silence. The tow driver spoke up again, his voice steady now. You two dragged me into this. You lied. I'm giving a full statement when this is over. The neighbors cheered softly, murmurs of approval rippling through the crowd. The imposters spun, panicked, realizing the tide had turned. That's when the taller one lost it. He lunged toward the tow truck controls again, snarling. Fine. We'll finish the job ourselves. The lead cop barked, step back. The younger officer's hand went to his cuffs, eyes sharp. But the imposter didn't stop. His hand reached for the lever, chain rattling as the tow truck lurched forward an inch. And then Claire's voice cracked through the chaos like a whip. I said step away. This time it wasn't calm suggestion. It was command. Command that carried authority deeper than the badge she still hadn't revealed. The imposter froze mid-step. His hand hovered. His chest heaved. Sweat poured down his temple. The crowd buzzed in disbelief. They couldn't explain it, but somehow that one order had stopped him cold. The lead cop turned sharply toward Claire, eyes narrowing. His voice was quieter now, almost cautious. Ma'am, who exactly are you? The crowd went still. The imposters looked between each other, panic finally breaking through their bravado. And Claire, standing tall in the flashing lights, finally reached into her purse again. This time she wasn't pulling out a driver's license. The taller imposter's chest rose and fell, his hand frozen inches from the tow truck's lever. He looked like a man caught between fight and flight, and for the first time since he swaggered onto my driveway, fear cracked his mask. Claire hadn't raised her voice much, but the way she spoke carried something undeniable. The kind of tone that doesn't come from neighborhood squabbles. The kind of tone trained into people whose authority can't be questioned. The lead officer's question hung in the air. Ma'am, who exactly are you? The crowd rippled with whispers. Is she a cop? Military maybe? No, there's something more. Phones zoomed in. Every lens was locked on Claire now. The imposters were unraveling. The shorter one muttered under his breath, we should go. This is bad. But the taller one, too deep into his performance to back out, shook his head violently. No. She's nothing. It's smoke and mirrors. She's bluffing. Don't fall for it. He tried to puff his chest, tried to recover his bluster, but the sweat on his brow betrayed him. His voice cracked. She has no authority here. None. Claire stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. Each step was measured. Controlled. She stopped just short of the imposters, close enough that the taller one instinctively leaned back half an inch. Her eyes never left his. Calm, unblinking. The kind of stare that makes men squirm. You've already made 3 mistakes today, she said evenly. The crowd hushed. First, you trespassed on my property without lawful authority. Second, you attempted to remove personal property with fraudulent paperwork. Her voice sharpened slightly as she took another half step closer. And third, you put your finger in my face and told me I didn't matter. The taller imposter swallowed hard. His bravado wavered. Claire tilted her head. That last one was the mistake you won't recover from. The murmurs surged louder now, neighbors hanging on every word. The lead cop's face shifted, not skepticism anymore but recognition. He'd seen this kind of presence before. He didn't say it out loud, but his posture changed. His shoulders squared, his hands moved away from his belt. A subtle show of respect. The younger officer noticed too. He glanced at his partner, then at Claire, uncertain but alert. The imposters, desperate, lashed out with noise. She's lying. She's manipulating everyone here. She's just the wife of a truck owner, nothing more. Their shouting only made them look smaller. The tow driver leaned against his truck now, arms folded, shaking his head. I knew something was off about you too. But her? She's the real deal. The taller imposter spun, snarling. Shut up. But the driver didn't flinch. No. I'm done being quiet. I'm not getting dragged into your mess. Whatever happens now, you brought it on yourselves. The imposters turned back to Claire, eyes wide, frantic. But Claire didn't rush. She let their panic echo. She let the silence build again. And when she finally spoke, her voice dropped low, commanding, undeniable. You wanted to know who I am? Her hand slipped back into her purse, deliberate, controlled. She pulled free the same slim black leather case she'd shown earlier. But this time she didn't open it quickly. She held it in her palm, letting the crowd see the weight of it, the stitching, the seriousness of it. The taller imposter scoffed nervously, voice too loud. That's fake. She bought that online. Don't believe her. But the way he said it betrayed him. His voice cracked again and the crowd knew it. Claire's thumb slid along the edge of the case. She looked directly at the lead officer. You asked who I am. The officer's expression hardened. Yes, ma'am. And now I'd like to know. The crowd leaned forward. Phones lifted higher. The entire street held its breath. Claire flipped the case open. A metallic glint caught the flashing red and blue lights. It was brief. A glimpse. Enough to freeze everyone in place. Enough to stop even the imposters mid-breath. But then she snapped it shut again. The taller imposter sputtered. That's nothing. You're trying to trick us. But no one believed him. Not anymore. The neighbors erupted in whispers. I saw it. It was a badge. Holy, she's law enforcement. Even the tow driver's jaw dropped. You've got to be kidding me? The younger cop's eyes widened. He whispered something to his partner, too low to catch, but the lead officer nodded grimly. Claire slipped the case back into her purse. Her voice was calm, almost casual now. You don't get the full reveal. Not yet. But know this, you're finished. The taller imposter's face drained of color. The shorter one actually took a step back, clipboard shaking in his grip. Desperation bubbled in their eyes. And then the taller one exploded, shouting at the officers, She's lying. Arrest her. Don't you see what she's doing? She's manipulating you. She's not real authority. But the lead cop didn't move toward Claire. He stepped toward them. The lead cop's voice boomed. Enough. If she's who I think she is, you've just dug yourselves a hole you can't climb out of. The imposters froze. The crowd gasped. And Claire finally said, softly but clearly, maybe it's time I stop being polite. The cul-de-sac had gone utterly still. Even the kids who had been whispering minutes earlier stood frozen, their basketball abandoned in the gutter. Every eye was fixed on Claire. Her calmness had shifted from quiet patience to something sharper, heavier. The imposters, once so loud and brash, now looked cornered. The taller one's sunglasses slid halfway down his nose, revealing wide, darting eyes. The shorter one's clipboard trembled in his hands like a leaf in the wind. The lead officer stepped closer, his voice measured but firm. Ma'am, if you are who I think you are, I need you to confirm it now. Claire didn't hesitate. She reached into her purse once more. The leather case came out again, but this time there was no pause, no tease. She flipped it open fully, her movements crisp, confident. The badge gleamed under the cruiser lights, polished and unmistakable. United States Secret Service. The crowd gasped audibly. Phones zoomed in, flashes firing. A neighbor's shaky voice broke the silence. Oh my God, she's Secret Service. The imposters' faces drained of color. The taller one stumbled back a step, tripping slightly over the curb. The shorter one dropped his clipboard. The papers fluttered across the pavement. The tow driver let out a low whistle, shaking his head in disbelief. Well, hell, guess I picked the wrong side of this one. The lead officer's posture shifted instantly. Shoulders squared, tone respectful. Ma'am. Understood. He gave a quick nod, a silent acknowledgement between professionals. The younger cop's jaw hung open. He whispered, Secret Service, here? Claire snapped the badge case shut with a decisive click and slid it back into her purse. Her voice carried, calm but edged with steel. Now we're done playing pretend. The crowd erupted. She's Secret Service. No way. Did you see their faces? The imposters panicked. She's lying, the taller one shouted, his voice shaking. That badge is fake. It's a trick. But his words didn't carry weight anymore. The fear in his tone betrayed him. The shorter one tried to regain ground, blurting out, We didn't know. Nobody told us who she was. This is entrapment. Claire stepped closer, her presence pressing down like a storm. You don't get to hide behind excuses. You impersonated authority. You attempted unlawful seizure of property. You harassed a federal agent on her own driveway. The taller imposter staggered, sweat running down his temple. You can't arrest us. You don't have jurisdiction. The lead cop cut in sharply. Jurisdiction's not your problem. Impersonating an officer is. And right now you're standing on very thin ice. The imposter's bravado collapsed completely. Their voices overlapped, desperate, incoherent. We were just following orders. We thought it was legit. We didn't mean. But no one was listening anymore. The neighbors' phones captured every second, every stammer, every frantic excuse. Their downfall was already public record. The tow driver raised his hands, backing away. Hey officers, I'll give a statement. But I'm done here. I didn't sign up for this circus. The lead cop nodded. We'll need that. You're not in trouble, unless you keep cooperating with them. The driver exhaled in relief, retreating toward the edge of the crowd. Meanwhile, the taller imposter tried one last pathetic angle. He jabbed his finger toward Claire again, though his hand shook visibly. She's bluffing. She has to be. Secret Service doesn't live in this neighborhood. This is all staged. Claire's eyes narrowed. You should have stopped when you had the chance. Her voice didn't rise, but it landed heavier than a shout. The imposter's finger dropped. His shoulders sagged. He knew it was over. The lead cop exchanged a look with his partner. Both officers shifted forward, hands near their cuffs. The younger one asked quietly, "Want me to move in?" The lead officer's answer was calm but final. "Not yet. Let her finish." The crowd buzzed again, realizing the officers were letting Claire take the lead. The taller imposter broke. His bravado shattered into panic. He grabbed his partner's sleeve, muttering, "We need to run. Now." But Claire's voice cut through, stopping them cold. "You're not going anywhere." The imposters froze. The lead officer finally stepped forward, pulling his cuffs free. The metal glinted under the flashing lights. He looked at Claire and asked one last time in a voice low enough for only those nearby to hear. "Ma'am, do we have your confirmation to take them in?" The crowd leaned in, holding their breath. And Claire gave a single nod. The lead cop's handcuffs glinted as he stepped forward, the metallic click of the hinge echoing like a final verdict. The crowd shifted, eager, almost hungry for the conclusion. Neighbors who had been hesitant earlier now leaned in, phones stretched higher. They wanted justice. They wanted proof that the loudest bullies always fell hardest. The taller imposter backed away, palms raised. His voice cracked, the arrogance gone. Wait, this isn't what it looks like. We were just following orders." The shorter one's words tumbled out in a panic. Yeah, we didn't plan this. We're just contractors. We didn't know she was..." His voice faltered, his eyes flicking toward Claire. "That." Claire didn't flinch. She stood perfectly still, arms folded now, as if the weight of the scene no longer required her to lift a finger. Her presence alone was enough. The lead cop snapped the cuffs open with a practiced flick. "Contractors or not, you impersonated authority and attempted to seize private property. That's a crime in this county and you both know it." The taller imposter's face went red. "We had authorization. From the board. They told us to." "Board authorization doesn't allow impersonation," the officer cut him off sharply. "And it sure as hell doesn't excuse lying to law enforcement." The shorter one's knees buckled. His clipboard slipped from his hand again, clattering on the pavement. He muttered, "We're finished. Oh God, we're finished." The younger officer moved in, firm and efficient. He grabbed the shorter man's wrists, pulling them behind his back with little resistance. The metallic snap of cuffs rang out, met by a cheer from the crowd. The taller one tried to bolt, spinning toward the curb. But the lead cop was faster. He caught him by the arm, twisted it smoothly, and slammed him against the tow truck's hood. The sound of metal meeting metal rang out, followed by a groan of defeat. Phones captured every second. Someone shouted, "That's what you get." Another called, "Pretend cops in our neighborhood, not anymore." The tow driver stood aside, shaking his head in disbelief. "Guess I'll be testifying, huh?" The lead cop gave him a curt nod. "Count on it." Claire finally spoke, her voice calm but edged with steel. "Make sure they're charged properly. Impersonation. Attempted theft. Harassment." The lead cop didn't hesitate. "Yes, ma'am." The imposters sputtered as they were dragged back, their arrogance stripped down to pathetic whimpers. "We didn't mean it. It was the board's idea. We were just following orders." But no one was listening. Their words drowned under the cheers and murmurs of the neighbors. For once, the community felt united, not by gossip, not by HOA threats, but by watching the loudest voices collapse under the weight of their own lies. I exhaled slowly, tension leaking out of me. My truck was safe, the imposters exposed. And my wife, well, she had just changed the way every neighbor looked at us. But just as the moment seemed to settle, just as the crowd began to clap and laugh nervously, a sharp, shrill voice cut through the night. "Stop." The sound froze everyone. The crowd turned toward the street. Marching down the sidewalk, phone in hand, face twisted in fury, was Karen, the HOA board member notorious for her gossip, her meddling, and her constant complaints about everything from lawn height to garbage bins. Her eyes blazed as she stormed into the circle, pointing directly at Claire. This is a setup. This is harassment against the HOA. The crowd groaned audibly. Someone muttered, "Of course Karen shows up now." The taller imposter, still half-cuffed, seized the moment. "Karen, tell them. Tell them you hired us." The shorter one chimed in desperately. "Yeah. You said this was official. You gave us the green light." The lead cop's head snapped toward Karen. "Ma'am, do you know these men?" Karen's face twitched. For a second, just a second, she looked cornered. But then she straightened, her voice shrill and indignant. "I am on the board. Everything they did was under my instruction. They were enforcing HOA rules. You have no right to interfere." The crowd gasped. Phones shot up higher. The lead cop's tone hardened. "So you're admitting you authorized them to impersonate law enforcement?" Karen scoffed. "Impersonation? Don't be ridiculous. They're HOA enforcement officers. The neighborhood voted for this." Claire's voice cut through, cold and calm. "No one voted for this. And impersonating authority is a felony, Karen." Karen spun toward Claire, venom in her voice. "Oh, don't you dare lecture me. You've always acted like you're above the rules. Parking that truck like you own the street. Smirking like you're untouchable. Well, newsflash, I run this neighborhood." The neighbors erupted in laughter. Even the kids snickered. The sound rattled Karen, but she pressed on, shouting louder. "You think flashing some fake badge makes you important? You think you can scare us with your little act?" She stepped closer, jabbing her finger at Claire, her face red with fury. The lead cop raised his hand, voice sharp. "Ma'am, step back." But Karen ignored him, her voice rising to a screech. "You don't belong here. And I'll prove it. I'll show everyone who you really are." Karen reached into her handbag with shaking hands, pulling out her phone. She waved it high, screen glowing. "I've got the messages right here. Proof that this whole thing is bigger than you think." The crowd gasped. The imposters looked at each other, suddenly hopeful. And Claire's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping like a blade. "Karen, if you share what I think you're about to share, you'll regret it more than they do." Karen's phone screen glowed like a weapon in her hand, her face twisted with triumph. She held it high, waving it toward the crowd and the police. "I've got the messages right here," she screeched. "Proof the board approved this. Proof that these men were following orders. You can't arrest them without arresting me too. And if you try, I'll sue this entire department." The neighbors muttered, disgusted but riveted. Phones zoomed in closer, recording every second of her outburst. Someone whispered, "She just dug her own grave." Another added, "Typical Karen, making it worse for herself." The lead cop stepped forward, hand raised. His voice cut sharp through the noise. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see that phone." Karen clutched it tighter against her chest. "You don't have the authority. This is HOA business. Not police business." Claire finally moved. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped into the center of the circle, her eyes locked on Karen's. The crowd hushed instantly. Even the officers seemed to step back slightly, leaving the two women facing off in the glow of the cruiser lights. Claire's voice was calm, steady, the kind of tone that carried further than shouting ever could. "Karen, listen carefully. You can hand that phone over to the officers right now and maybe walk away with a lawyer and some dignity. Or you can keep waving it around, digging yourself deeper, and guarantee that every text, every call, every message you've ever sent about this neighborhood is subpoenaed and read aloud in court." The crowd gasped. Karen's bravado faltered. Her grip on the phone trembled. But she tried one last desperate swing. She jabbed a finger at Claire, her voice shrill. "You're bluffing. That badge was fake. You're nothing but a—" Claire cut her off with a single word, spoken with absolute finality. "Enough." The command wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It rolled through the crowd like thunder, silencing every whisper, every gasp. Even the imposters in cuffs stopped fidgeting. Karen froze, her finger hanging midair. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time she looked unsure. The lead cop seized the moment. He stepped forward, plucked the phone from her trembling hand and turned the screen toward himself. His eyes scanned quickly, then narrowed. Well, he muttered. "Looks like we've got more than enough here." He turned the phone around for the younger officer, who nodded grimly. The crowd erupted. Gasps, mutters, even laughter. She really incriminated herself. Can you believe she kept receipts? Karen's face went pale. She lunged for the phone, but the officer stepped back. "Ma'am, that's evidence now. You'll need to come with us." The words landed like a hammer. Karen's voice cracked. You can't do this. I am the HOA. The crowd burst into laughter. Someone shouted, Not anymore, you're not. The younger officer pulled out a second pair of cuffs. The metallic snap echoed as he secured Karen's wrists. She struggled, shrieking, but her words were drowned out by the cheering neighbors. The taller imposter tried to twist around, cuffed hands rattling. Karen, do something. But Karen was dragged toward the cruiser, her protests fading into a shrill, incoherent wail. For the first time all evening, the cul-de-sac felt lighter. Neighbors clapped. Someone even whistled. Relief mingled with satisfaction. A community united not by Karen's rules, but by watching her finally face consequences. The lead cop turned to Claire, his voice respectful. Ma'am, thank you. Without your intervention, this could have gone very differently. Claire gave a small nod. Just doing what needed to be done. The officer's tone softened. If you'd prefer, we'll keep your name off the public record. Claire's eyes flicked briefly toward the crowd, toward the dozens of phones still raised. A faint smile tugged at her lips. That won't be necessary. They already know. The officer nodded. He didn't argue. The imposters and Karen were loaded into the back of the cruisers. Doors slammed. Engines hummed. Slowly, the flashing lights began to fade as the cars pulled down the street, carrying them away. The crowd lingered, buzzing with energy. Neighbors turned to us, shaking hands, clapping shoulders. About time someone stood up to them. Didn't know your wife was that. Guess we won't be seeing Karen at meetings anymore. I looked at Claire, my wife, standing calm in the middle of it all. The woman who had just dismantled a staged intimidation, revealed her badge, and taken down the loudest voice in the neighborhood without raising her voice more than once. I felt something shift. The neighbors didn't just see us as another couple on the block anymore. They saw us differently. Respected. Protected. Claire finally exhaled a quiet sigh. She turned to me, her eyes softening. Truck's safe. I laughed, tension finally breaking. Yeah. Thanks to you. She squeezed my hand. You'd have done the same. Maybe. But watching her stand there, calm and unshaken while everything unraveled, I wasn't so sure. The neighbors began to drift back to their homes, still buzzing, still talking, still posting. The cul-de-sac returned to quiet, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. It was the quiet after a storm, cleaner, lighter, freer. Claire picked up her coffee mug from the porch rail, still half full, still warm. She took a sip as if nothing had happened, then glanced at me with a faint smirk. Now maybe we'll get some peace around here. That night taught me something important. People who scream the loudest, who throw their weight around, who act like they're untouchable, they're usually the weakest. All it takes is one moment of truth to knock them down. What about you? If two strangers tried to tow your vehicle with fake authority, how would you handle it? Thanks for watching this story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real HOA dramas where justice always finds its way home.